YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back, reacting to the top 10 of NFL Network's top 100 list, voted by the players. I don't know which players, but we're also comparing my ranks that I did based off last season. At the end of the season, we did a live stream revealing those, so I'm kind of comparing to and reacting to the top 10, which I didn't really agree with at all. So we'll get through these in just a second. Subscriber goals at 40K. Please subscribe to the channel. Anybody that does, we appreciate you very much. But what can you expect from the Goat House going forward? Some more predictions, breakdown videos for the upcoming season, but then in-season, full coverage, recapping each week. We got straight-up picks with other members of the Goat House. I do score predictions for each week. I update power rankings each week, college football predictions, and more. So you're going to want to click that subscribe button. Clicking that like button would be much appreciated. Check out our Twitter there for updates, and there's a link in the description for that. All that would help us out a ton. Appreciate you guys very much. So number 10 on the top 100 list was Von Miller. I had him at 20, so a little bit of a difference, 10 to 20 there, I guess. But I love Von Miller's game. The only thing I can say as to why I had him at 20, I just thought there was 19 better players is really what it was. So it's hard to split up guys that play different positions, and I think Von Miller can do more. He's very good. I think he can do more than last year. They got a good new coach coming in there, Vic Fangio, that really knows that type of defense, really knows, familiar with guys like Von Miller, that type of players. So I think he will be better this year. So top 10 doesn't really surprise me, but I had him, I'd be more comfortable down in that 20 range, obviously, or I don't have a problem with this one. I think I have more of my problems are for some of the other ones going forward, so let's move on. Number 9 was Julio Jones, and I had it 19. So we had my number 20 at their number 10. We had my 19 at their number 9, so that was kind of weird. And basically the same thing here. I'm not really surprised. I just thought there was 18 better players. Julio Jones was the top of the NFL in receiving yards. I just thought, he did start off a little slow, I thought. I just wanted a full year of production. And, he did have, for really just going off, I guess, the second half of the year, I guess a little more than that, 3/4 of the year, and putting up those numbers is pretty darn impressive. Really, what it comes down to is I just thought there was 18 better players. I thought there was more dominant players for their team than Julio Jones, but I really don't have a problem with number 9. Number 8 was Aaron Rodgers, and yep, I didn't rank him. I did not rank Aaron Rodgers. Again, my rankings were based off last year, and people may say, well, he only threw 1 interception or 2, whatever it was. Yeah, that's right. But he also threw the ball away more than I throw my underwear away. No, that doesn't make any sense. He threw the ball away too much. Way too much. And I think it cost them. It costed them from getting first downs. It was crucial situations. I don't really know what the situation was, but he threw the ball away way too much. I know they got McCarthy out of there. We'll see how that works. I guess there was time for change, but I don't really know if McCarthy was the issue. You're telling me that Aaron Rodgers, the Aaron Rodgers, can't change the play at the line of scrimmage? I think he did. I think he did change the play. So I think a little more blame for last year needs to be put on him. And that's why he wasn't ranked for me. All those things combined going forward, he would easily be in my top 100 as long as he stays healthy. That's the only concern I have. In general, and from what he's done over his career, easily, top 10 player. But based off last year, not ranked. So he's all the way up at 8, I guess, because he still has the respect from the players, what they remember playing against throughout the years. That's I guess, the flaw of, having the players vote, because they don't really play against all these players every year. They just remember what they can from maybe the 1 or 2 times they played against them. Maybe it's more than that. Number 7 was Antonio Brown. I had at 22. If it's based off last year, I don't think he belongs in the top 10. But I still thought highly of him. He was at number 22. But again, I don't know if he had. He had another dominant season. There's just that many good players in the NFL, but I don't know if he had as good of a season as he had in the past. I just don't think he was a top 10 player. That's really my point there. Number 6 was Tom Brady, and I had all the way at 45. I think he's the GOAT. I think he's the greatest of all time, and I even put him at the number 1 quarterback for this upcoming season. I think he'll have a better year this upcoming year. And yeah, he did win the Super Bowl last year, but if you remember, if you watched our live stream, my ranking system was based off last year in full. So playoffs and Super Bowl did matter, but they played a small part because it really wasn't fair to the players that didn't make the playoffs because it, one player doesn't really make up their team. I guess quarterbacks are very important. But based off last year, majority of it being regular season, I thought he was probably below 45, but then he going through the playoffs and then winning the Super Bowl, being dominant there throughout the playoffs, raised him up to 45. So being sixth based off last year, I don't agree with, but it's no surprise whatsoever here. Really, you can make the case that he's the best player in all of football in general, and he has been, the best player of all time, really. The best career out of any player, any quarterback. So 6 makes sense in, that way, but if it's just based off last year, I guess it makes sense too, because the players voting, they're like, well, he won the Super Bowl. That's it, But, the way I kind of looked at it was I got to make the regular season count a little more for the players, because the players that, help the team as much as they can, but it's not really their fault. They weren't in the playoffs, so they have a chance of getting less points there. To me, I had to make regular season count the most there. So that's why he was at 45, but I think he'll have a better year this year. And then he can possibly win a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl MVP again. Number 5 was Todd Gurley. I had at 12. And yeah, him kind of sitting out the end of the year, and then going into playoffs. I don't really deduct points for him sitting out in the playoffs or anything. But I guess the end of the year, and he had a pretty dominant year for 90% of the year. So that's why he was all the way up at 12. But I couldn't quite put him all the way up at 5. I thought there was just 11 better players. Hard to put a running back that high for me, but nothing too surprising there. Most of the year he was pretty dominant. But again, the players, they kind of let Tom Brady winning the playoffs and winning the Super Bowl kind of determine where they were going to rank him. But then they kind of had Todd Gurley that didn't matter, that he didn't help the team. He kind of just dressed, but just didn't get in there and played. So it's kind of back and forth. And then you got Aaron Rodgers, who didn't make the playoffs and didn't have his best year. I know he was probably playing hurt, but so they're kind of all over the place. That's why it really doesn't make any sense. Number 4 was Patrick Mahomes. I had it number 1. It was a battle for me between who was number 1 and who was number 2. It was really, I'm not going to argue with you if you flip those. We'll see who my number 2 was in a little bit. But he was number 1 for me. And I was surprised NFL Network had him at 4. So this kind of brings up the debate again. Is it based off last year? Is it based in general? Because he only had one really good season. So I'm guessing that kind of what went on here. So I was surprised to see him at 4. But I'm not going to get too upset with NFL Network for that. But again, I was very surprised. I thought he was going to be 1 or 2. 3 at the very, very, very lowest. But he was my number 1 player of the 2018 through 2019 season, was dominant all year. You throw for that many touchdowns. Come on now. That was a deciding factor. And, good team with Alex Smith, but the difference with a first-year starter with Mahomes just shows how good he is. He doesn't get bonus points because that was his first year starting. My point is just how much better the team was with this freakish, rare talent. And Alex Smith was a good quarterback, so it just shows how good Mahomes is. That's my point. Number 3 was Khalil Mack. I had at 18. It's a tough one because Khalil Mack really made a big impact for the Bears. Really, I almost think it turned around the Bears more. He's a dominant player. And let me get this straight. If it's just based off in general, I'm putting him in the top 3, possibly number 2 of the best players going forward. I predicted him to win Defensive Player of the Year as a Raiders player last year, and I stuck with that pick as the Bears. Once he got traded to the Bears, it was like a week later after I predicted that. Aaron Donald was just insanely dominant. But Khalil Mack, made a huge impact. But I was almost like the idea of Khalil Mack being there and the Bears thinking, all right, we're legit. I thought that played a big part too. The reason he was 18, I think kind of like Von Miller. I think he can do more. I think he will do more this year. We actually saw at times where Khalil Mack had to come out of games because he was kind of gassed. Which is a good thing going forward because, he just showed up to the Bears team. He just got traded there right before the season started. Think about that. He was holding out all offseason. He's going to be in better shape this year. He's going to be on the field more. He's going to get more reps. He's going to get more sacks, more pressures that I expect him to. He had a good amount last year, but I'm not basing it only off that. But there's a lot of players that got more. Just high instinctive plays, though, is what kind of brings him to the top. Highly instinctive. Some of the strips he had and the forced fumbles weren't just, 90% of forced fumbles and strip sacks, strips are pretty much luck, but he knows exactly what he's doing, and that's the great thing. So top 3 player in the NFL for me, 100% based off last year. I just thought there were 17 better, more dominant players, but he made an impact just him being there. I thought Akeem Hicks was the Bears MVP of last season. That's my opinion. I don't have to think too much about that, though. I thought Akeem Hicks was the more dominant player, but Khalil Mack is the best player on the Bears, and I think will be this year. Number 2, Drew Brees. Was surprised by this one, even though pretty close for me, too. I had him at 5, but 2 is just a little much. I don't know if I would put him at 2 based off last season. 98% of the season he was great. I wish he would have played a little better in the playoffs. And then towards the end of the season, I guess, but it still was great. That's why I had him at 5. I just don't know if he did enough for 2. But then if this is in general 2, I don't know if he's 2 either. I still feel comfortable around that 5 to 10 range if it's going forward or for this year. So I think breaking a career stat, career record, stats that build up over a career led to this, which really doesn't make any sense, which kind of stuck into players' heads, but great achievement. Now, I'm not trying to take anything away from Drew Brees here whatsoever. I mean, I had him at 5, but I think that kind of played a part when voting. I guess that's the flaw, but at the same time, if you get like a committee to vote, there's probably going to be a disaster too. I was just very, very surprised he was at number 2. Number 1 was Aaron Donald, who I had at 2, and I'm not going to argue with him being 1. I strongly considered him for number 1. And I'm a defensive guy, too. I really like defensive football. So I strongly considered it, but I gave the edge to Mahomes there. When it's that close, I gave the edge to Mahomes, throwing for that many touchdowns. And I guess that was the decider. But Aaron Donald being 1, I am not going to argue with that one bit. I did have him at 2, though. We're not done yet with these videos. So, yeah, Aaron Donald was the king of the top 100 this year. We went through 100 players. As you saw my ranks compared to their ranks, there was a lot of NRs, which stood for not ranked, throughout this list. There was 29 of them. So that means there was 29 players that were on my list that were not on the top 100 list. That's a lot. So I'm going to start working on that video. I want to get it out today. It may be tonight. A lot to do on that. So we're going to see the 29 players that were snubs, according to me, really. I mean, you can come up with more probably, but we're going to go through the 29 guys that were ranked on my video, where they were ranked, and maybe why they weren't ranked on this video, and then we're going to find out who the number 1 snub was. I haven't even gone back and looked. I mean, obviously, I remember doing my own ranking, so I remember a good bit of it, but we're going to see who the number 1, who the highest ranked guy was on my list. We're going to see all 29, but I'm very curious to see your guys' reaction to who the biggest snub was from my list to this list. So that video is next. Today is the 1st of August, so if you're watching, maybe you're watching this in the future, but I want to get that video out later today. Could be tonight on here, the 1st of August, for you guys. And plenty more videos to come. Cannot wait for the regular season. We got full coverage in season. Hopefully you can join us for that. A lot of big news coming too. I want to get to some fantasy videos. We may have a fantasy league. We will, actually. More news on that, info on that. Fantasy league open that you guys can possibly have to join. You're going to have to do some things to get in it, but more info on that coming soon. Fantasy league for you guys. So, cannot wait for this season. I'm pumped. And then tonight's actually is the Hall of Fame game. Let's go. I'm getting excited. I forgot about that for a second. I woke up this morning and I was just like, that game's tonight. And as I was doing this video, I just totally forgot that game's tonight. Broncos-Falcons. Hopefully we get to see some Drew Lock. I was a big Drew Lock fan as a prospect. So I'm just rambling on now. That's going to do it for this one. Thanks everyone for watching. Goodbye.